Hello. In the third of our onboarding series of videos, we are now going to cover off the invoice settings. These are available to you from the settings button. And if we come down and go into the company settings, which we just covered in video 2, and we come down the page a little bit, we have the invoice settings. Now here you have a series of options which are available to you. I'm going to go through them relatively quickly, but I'll try to explain everything to you as much as I possibly can. First of all, you have 6 or 7 different formats of how you might like your invoices to look. What we do recommend is, if you'd like, start off with default, okay? And then what we would do is say, run an invoice, just a sample invoice, come back into the invoice settings, change the format again, and then go back and look at the invoice again. Every time you change the format for an invoice, you can reissue the same invoice. It's not going to create a new invoice. It's just going to present it to you in the different format. All right. The easiest way to start is by default. That will include your logo at the top of your invoice. The next thing, which is very, very important, of course, is to look at what your default invoice terms are. Now, the example that I always use with any workshop when I'm doing an onboarding series with them is to say, if I were to bring my car into your workshop today and you didn't know me, what would your expectation be of when I would pay you? And 99.9% of workshops say, you'll pay me when the car is finished before you pick it up. So the default terms would be cash on delivery. That would be the case for most workshops. If you do have customers who you extend credit terms to, you simply go into the customer's record and you change their invoice terms for that customer. And then you save their record. And whatever terms you've given them, whenever you issue an invoice for them, those will be the terms which will come up for them. All right. But for the most part, most workshops will work with cash on delivery. The next suggestion I'm going to make is that you would hide the part numbers on your invoices. This will not hide the part numbers on your screen. You will still always see the part numbers. However, it will just give you the description on the invoice of what the part is. It's a genuine oil filter, for example, but the part number might be Z79. And if you hide the part numbers, this creates a scenario where it's more difficult for your customers to take a quote home, for example, and to go and see if they can find the prices cheaper somewhere else. All right. So we would always say, hide your part numbers on your invoices. The next option I'm going to suggest is that we make the job number the same as the invoice number. And we toggle that on to yes. The reason that we do that is because when you've created a booking in Workshop software and you start the job, that creates an invoice. But it's an invoice in name only, because it doesn't become a true invoice until you process it. In the time period between the booking and processing the invoice, it is a job. So what you would want is, you would want your job number, okay, to remain the same, so that when you finally process the invoice, the numbers will be exactly the same on both of those. And I will actually show you that when we actually do an invoice. As an example here, I have a job number, okay? So this invoice has not been finalized yet, all right? And it says that the job number is 50004. If I were to process this invoice and say that this is exactly how much the customer owes me, then this label would change from job number to invoice number, as an example. The next thing I would probably recommend is that we're going to hide the tire details on the job card. And the reason that I do that is because in various different scenarios, depending on what type of workshop you have, you might be dealing with different axle configurations. You might be dealing with diesel trucks. You might be dealing with all kinds of different scenarios where the default information on the job card is insufficient to your purposes. All right. So you can create templates which will allow you to put in more tire detail and more braking information detail. So I would always turn this off and say, yes, hide the tire details. The last thing that I would do, or the second to last thing I would do, is I would say the hours worked field should always be on. All right, this is very, very important, because when your mechanics clock on and clock off jobs, this gives you the information on the screen, which enables you to see how long a job has been worked on. So therefore, it tells you exactly how much you might want to charge your customer for. Once again, the customer will never see that information. It will simply be on the invoice screen, and it allows you to get a more accurate reading of exactly how much to charge your customer. The last note that I would put in here is prevent split notes on an invoice. Preventing split notes on an invoice is a scenario where if you have a long story to tell your customer about what you've done for them, what you want that to do is look as professional as possible when you present it on the invoice. Preventing split notes on the invoice, as I've turned it on here, would simply put the long story into a separate box and quite possibly onto a second page, but it would actually look very, very professional. We'll show you that when we actually come in and do an invoice with a job. That concludes the invoice settings video, and I hope that that has been of benefit to you. All the rest of this information, all right, is always available to you up here in the user guides, okay, which is the icon, the question mark icon in the top right-hand corner. You go into help guides and resources, and any of these subjects, right, you can actually find either a video, a short video, or an article which explains these in more detail. And I will be covering these things a little bit further in some of the other videos that we do. For example, when we were talking about items or bundles, I should say. All right. Thank you very much. I hope that's been beneficial for you.